All right, hello everybody. Welcome into the first committee meeting of the season, season 15. We've got quite a bit of people. We have 4 right now, might get some more. But as always, if this is your first time in the SFA or your first season really tracking it, the playoff committee meets 3 times. First time is right now, right after week 13. We'll meet again after week 14, and then we'll meet again after the conference championships to decide the playoff. The reason we do this is because after each week, we have new information. So we're not just copying and pasting rankings from previous weeks and redoing it. We have new information, new teams winning divisions, etc. Each and every week. And the goal is to get the top 25, which showcases not only the playoff, but also a lot of the bowl game matchups. So the first meeting is always by far the hardest. Now remember, in week 13, we can only use the information we know. So you can only use what has happened to this point. You can't consider who they're playing next week or what's coming down the line, the conference championships. You can, if a team has already clinched their division, we can use that as kind of a bargaining chip to decide between teams. But the goal right now, it's not to worry about buys or auto bids or anything like that. It's more so to just get our top 25 going into the final week of the regular season. So that's what we're gonna do. Just a few little notes when we're going through like resumes and stuff. Historically, a quality win is considered anybody who's bowl eligible, so 6 wins or more. Obviously, quality wins are not created equal. A high tier like top 25 win versus a team who's like 9-3 is better than somebody who's like 6-6. However, sometimes when deciding between resumes, some teams' strength of schedule is a bit better because they face more middle tier teams rather than the bottom of the barrel guys. Other things to consider. Might have lost my train of thought here. I think that's mainly it. We're just going to, ideally, at the start of the committee rankings, just how it kind of goes a little bit quicker or a little bit smoother is I have the game up. I have all of the updated information. So we're going to go through all of the 20 divisions, and I kind of write down what teams have our what teams we have our eye on and who could potentially be in our top 25. So we're going to start out with the ACC. I think in terms of rankings here, obviously we got to rank Buffalo. They're a big player here. But I think Pitt is really the only other rankable team right now. And don't pay attention to the current rankings. That's just the in-game. But 3 losses at this point in a Power 5 team is typically on your radar. So I'm just going to write them down, but don't know if they'll end up being ranked. So in the Coastal, and then also, now guys, shout out anything if you see it. But Georgia Tech and UNC are the obvious ones. And then when you talk about...
I think
go ahead.
East Carolina's kind of really had a lot of quality losses, so I think East Carolina's rankable. I wouldn't necessarily say if they're close to the actual like top 12 right now, but I think they are rankable.
Yeah, typically 4-loss teams are very fringe, and typically we only kind of keep them in if they have like a path to a division win or a playoff. However, when you're considering your defending national champions, right? I mean, if there's a 4-loss team to consider, they might be one. So I'm still going to write them down. But I'm not going to write down NC State. If we look at them, obviously 4 losses. They've had some injuries. They've lost 4 of their last 6. So I think they're eliminated right now, and we can always come back. When it comes to the American, this is on paper the worst conference in the country right now statistically. Cincinnati is the only rankable team. Army, 3 losses in the G5 is just nowhere near it. As always, when it comes to the group of 5, when we go through our rankings, we only rank based off that G5 auto bid. So Cincinnati's in the race, so we'll rank them, but nobody else from that conference. But Big 12, I have Iowa State for sure getting ranked, even though they lost this week. And then Nebraska, I think, is very similar to East Carolina. Now, the weird thing is, though, they still have a chance to win the division, so I think we still got to factor that in as well. But they are definitely a team to consider, also considering they on a 3-game win streak against top 25 teams.
I mean, funnily enough, I guess Arkansas has the tiebreaker over them.
So the weird thing here is I don't know if the division is settled right now, but Iowa State, if they beat Kansas State, they're good. However, if they lose, they do not have the tiebreaker over Nebraska, but they do have it over Arkansas. And then for Arkansas, they have a win over Nebraska, but they lost to Iowa State. And same thing for Nebraska. So I don't know who wins it in that 3-way tie scenario. I think I'm kind of hoping that we don't run into that, but we will see. It would come down to Rick's tiebreakers. But yeah. South.
Should we?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, should we be kind of thinking of this as who would we not want to wait? Who would we not want to face the most? Like, who looks the best, or who just has the best resume, or is that a question
I think
further down the line?
I think it's just kind of how you feel about a team, because obviously, like, your team might match up separately based on how they are. Obviously, I think where resume ultimately matters the most is the final ranking, because it's your full body of work. However, in these rankings, a team like a Nebraska is on a 3-game win streak. You might put them into the top 25 because they also have a path to the playoffs still. Whereas if it's if it's the final ranking, Nebraska never made it to their conference championship, and they're 8-4. Are they worth ranking in that situation? Who knows, right? So yeah, I think it's just kind of a 50-50 on how you feel about a team. Everything is historically just such a case-by-case scenario. So, like, here, for instance, you got Michigan for sure, and then we have probably a Maryland that we consider ranking, but I don't think Penn State or Ohio State have kind of that aura or that ability to be ranked. Now here, this is an interesting division because Minnesota seems like they are the better team in terms of positioning and season, but Iowa has the division. So this is a team that, if they win the Big Ten, could make the playoff with 4 losses. So I think they are still somebody to consider, even coming off of that game day game. Conference USA, nobody. Independent, I don't think you can consider a BYU team because they've lost to all the good quality teams on their schedule. But I think you could consider a Miami in our ranking. They are ranked in game. They have been ranked in the coaches poll. But I think it's going to be interesting where we rank them if we do, because they have that quality win over Hawaii. But the rest of the schedule is just not good. They have no chance at a conference championship. So it's kind of going to come down to that Florida game. But we'll keep our eye on them. I'm writing them down. The MAC, I think Ohio is similar position to Cincinnati, where it's a bad conference, but you still got to rank them. They're having a good season. Mountain West, looks like the only rankable team is Fresno.
Fresno lost their quarterback. Do we have any info on his injury?
I can check, but that's not going to impact Week 13 rankings. That's something where, for considering playoff, we can...
I'm just I don't want them to get Florida Stated.
Florida Stated?
Like Jordan Travis.
Oh, come on.
Oh, no, I mean... Yeah, I'll do the injury update tomorrow, but for, like, considering them in the rankings, we're not going to let that impact us right now. We're going to assume he's fully healthy.
Good.
But Oregon, very interesting team. They won with a backup quarterback this week to win the division. So, and then USC completely shit themselves. However, they still are in a position to win the Pac-12 because they have the tiebreakers. So I still think we have to consider ranking them. SEC, pretty easy. There's going to be a bulk of teams here. You got Florida. You got Tennessee, who's another team like Iowa who has the division kind of at their fingertips. If they beat Vanderbilt this week, they win the division. And then you got Auburn. And then you have, I don't think you rank Alabama, but we got to consider them with the 3-loss. They have just weird season. And then on the other side, Texas, A&M with a big win today. And I don't think you rank Oklahoma. I think that out of any of these 4-loss teams we've written down, they just completely fell off the map here. I mean, let me know if you disagree, but they've lost 4 of 5. Not particularly great teams in here as well. I mean, Georgia is the worst team of the bunch. But the other wins are not good. So, I'm not going to write them down. If you want me to write them down, I will, but...
I'd have them on there, I guess, as like a very, very, very low. Like
Yeah.
if it comes down to it, they can be ranked, but it would be like a very 24-25 at best.
Yeah. So,
Like,
I'm going to write down Southern Miss for sure. Coastal Carolina I am writing down because they've won that division. I'm not going to write down Arkansas State. Like I was saying earlier, for the G5, it's kind of different. It's not so much, okay, are they rankable, but it's more about the G5 auto bid. Like, we can rank them if we want, but Arkansas State season's pretty much over in terms of an auto bid or making the playoff with these 2 losses. But I'll still write them down. So, okay. So, after going through all the divisions, let's see how many teams I've written down. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. I got 29 teams written down. So, there's going to be 4 teams that don't get ranked out of this bunch. But we're not going to worry about that too much. Instead of looking at 126, we now are down to 29 that we're considering. So, I guess where we typically start, number 1, Baylor has been the team that's been ranked number 1. Does anybody have any other takes?
None from me. I think they've had a lot of quality wins. They've won over, as it's showing there, they've won over 4 current top 10 teams.
Yeah.
And of course, they've just been pretty dominant other than the Mizzou game. I think Baylor's number 1.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
it's
without
just
question.
yeah, that was just a fluke loss against Mizzou.
And even so,
I think-
I mean, yeah, the 4 wins. 2 on the road.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, 2 on the road. Michigan as well. I mean, so got Baylor at 1. I think that's pretty obvious here, so I'm going to cross them out here. Now, if we look at our 1-loss Power 5 teams, the other ones to consider is you have Buffalo, who I'll flash on the screen here. Quality wins against Army, Pitt, Georgia Tech on the road's a fun one, Clemson and East Carolina, and the loss to Boston College. So they have 5 quality wins here. And then the 1 loss is to a 6-5 team. If we go to the Big Ten, we got Michigan, who lost to Baylor, so best possible loss you could have. And then they beat Maryland. Only other quality wins is Wisconsin, Minnesota. They also beat East Carolina. However, they beat them by more. They beat them by 2 touchdowns, and Penn State. So 5 quality wins for Michigan. Same as Buffalo. Better loss. Do we have any other 1 loss? I mean, I guess we could consider...
North Carolina?
North Carolina's
North
a
Carolina
2.
one loss?
They have 2 losses.
Oh.
But we could consider them. But the only other team I think you would consider is Texas or Texas A&M here. Anybody have any other conniptions about this?
I got
mean,
nothing.
I
It's
don't
not as
think
good.
I don't think A&M or Texas should be at 2. I'm mainly considering between Michigan and Buffalo.
Yeah, I think I'm leaning more that way too. And I wouldn't put Southern Miss at 2 either.
No.
Even though they do have the win over Florida, which seems to be a pretty good win. They have the win over Coastal. They have the win over Arkansas. I mean, they have some good wins here.
They beat Texas?
Yeah, on the road. So Florida. So Fresno is a quality win. You got Texas. You got UAB technically. LA Tech technically. Coastal, Troy, and Arkansas State. So that was at 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 quality wins. The loss is a hurtful one. Or no, so they have 6 quality wins. They lost to LA Tech. But I think you put them in the top 10, but I don't think you put them at 2. So my vote would be
not 2.
my vote would be Michigan.
Top 10, but not top 5.
Yeah.
I'm
So
gonna vote Michigan because of and I think the biggest thing for me that was the difference was both ECU games, the Michigan versus ECU and Buffalo versus ECU, and just a similar opponent. Michigan's only loss coming against what we're ranking as the number 1 team. And those are really the 2 biggest factors for me was the ECU game and the losses. So I think I have Michigan at 2, Buffalo at 3, and then we can go from
I
there.
can agree on that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a home loss, or it's a home win over ECU by 1 versus 2 scores on the road, and then much better loss. So I think that's perfectly fine. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. They'd all get first round buys. Okay, so now we've got our top 3 here. We got Baylor, Michigan, Buffalo. So where do we go from here? Because I believe outside of Southern Miss and some of the other G5 contenders, those are all of our one-loss teams. So where do you go from here? I think you probably go somewhere in the SEC or potentially a Georgia Tech.
Unironically, I think Southern Miss should be ranked ahead of Texas.
I don't think
And
so. I don't think it's
that
early
resume
enough.
is impressive.
Well, I mean, okay.
I gotta see Texas for that one, Chief.
So Texas loses to Baylor. They beat Boston
They have
College,
one ranked
so
win.
that's 1.
Okay.
OU,
Yeah.
technically. Yeah, don't pay attention to the rankings here. So OU is considered somewhat quality, and then Auburn on the road. So that's 3 quality wins, but they're 2 big opportunities they lose.
Yeah, I like Southern Miss over Texas. But
I agree with that.
You put Southern Miss at 4?
No. I'm not saying at 4 necessarily, but I think we were too quick to dismiss them in the top 5. So if you guys like A&M or Georgia Tech better, that's fine. I just don't think Texas deserves it over Southern Miss.
I mean, the Sun Belt has been.
What?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's A&M's like resume looking like?
So they also lost to Baylor. Everybody's lost to Baylor, it seems. They lost to LSU, which keeps getting worse. So that's kind of comparable to like a Boston College, even though I think LSU on paper is a bit better. But in terms of their wins, TCU and Oklahoma, this is a
That's so
terrible.
bad.
Yeah, it's not a great schedule.
I unironically like Southern Miss at 4.
Texas A&M really have
Okay,
a lot of
let's see here.
quality wins. I'm gonna say Georgia Tech at 4.
All right. Well, let's since we're considering a G5 team right now, let's just go through all the 2-loss teams. I might be able
That's
to be
a pretty
sold
awful
here.
schedule too.
Yeah, the
You ain't got
highest
one.
quality win
Florida's
is
not. Yeah.
Georgia and Bama are the only wins. Okay. Let's look at Georgia Tech. We haven't looked at them yet. We'll also look. So UNLV technically okay. That Western Kentucky loss not great. Army's good. Buffalo loss was close. East Carolina's a great win. UNC is another big time win, and NC State. So you got 5 quality wins here.
Yeah, I've got GT
Okay.
I've got GT at 4.
UNC.
I'm good with that.
UNC, you got Boston College to win in OT. You got NC State. you've got then 2 losses here. So only 2 quality wins for UNC. They're more on par with like a Florida. Before we put pen to paper, Oklahoma State, Arizona, Arkansas, TCU. Then they beat ISU. So 4 quality wins. The top win is that Iowa State win.
Nothing else really after that.
Iowa State, Boston College in overtime, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, TCU. So that's 5 quality wins. Then they lost 2 in a row against their toughest teams. But no
5
upper echelon.
technically quality win. I mean, nothing other than the Iowa State win. Nothing really up there. I think Georgia Tech with the wins over UNC and ECU. I think Georgia Tech just has the advantage for me. I think they're 4 for now.
Yeah, I'm good with like Georgia Tech 4. And then honestly, I was not impressed with any of those 2-loss teams. I would put Southern Miss at 5, but that's just
Okay, so see, the thing is, how do we decide all these 2-loss teams? Okay. I'm fine with Georgia Tech 4. Yeah, I guess we're fine with it. All right, let's. Georgia Tech.
Let's see what about
It's just Georgia Tech out of the 9-2 Power 5 teams really just has the best looking resume, and I mean it's not really hard to say. It's not really hard to get the best looking resume out of those 9-2 teams because a lot of them don't have very many quality wins.
Well, the fact is, for the Sun Belt, they are looking fantastic this year. Like, even Coastal Carolina's resume is going to look good. You know, Ohio State, you got Nebraska, you've got Iowa. That's 3 quality wins to start. You got UCF on here. And then the stumble to Troy, they always stumble to Troy, but they beat UAB, and then they just beat JSOW. That's 6 quality wins, and they'll have a chance to rectify that win against Southern Miss in the championship. So there's a chance here for Coastal too. I think that their resume does stack up against some of these 2-loss teams. So okay, so
True,
right now
but if
I
we're
have.
considering right now, then obviously Coastal Carolina isn't going to be up to snuff.
Yeah, no, I don't think we consider them here, but so
I
where do
also
we go
think that,
next?
like Southern Miss with that game against Fresno State, they've essentially clinched the Group of 5 conference in a way, where as long as they win out, they have that tiebreaker over Fresno and they're going to get into the
Yeah,
playoffs.
for sure. The thing is like for Fresno, the Sun Belt just might be too good that regardless of the outcome that they might get locked out.
Like a 2-loss champ over, like a Coastal champ over Fresno.
Potentially, especially with Minnesota losing, but
Yeah,
we're getting ahead
that's
of
tough.
ourselves. I think here, just kind of based off of, I don't know, if you look at the eye test, or what we call the eye test, I think next is somewhere of a combo between either Texas and Oklahoma State, or maybe Iowa State, even though they lost this week. Maybe you have to punish Iowa State a little bit more, but
Yeah, I don't think Iowa State can really be here over an Oklahoma State after.
Oregon.
Not what the heck.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They lost Stanford.
Are we
though.
considering 6 right now?
Yeah, we're at 6 right now. I have Southern Miss,
Okay.
Georgia Tech at 4 and 5.
Cool.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I guess it does matter in a sense, because this is probably where our bubble lies, is in all these 9-2 teams. We have a shitload of them. All right, why don't we put all of our 2-loss teams out on the table here? So, we've got North Carolina.
Texas A&M,
Hold on.
Florida,
UNC,
Auburn,
Iowa State. We've got Miami is a 2-loss. Miami.
I've
We
played
got
like half of the schools.
OK State. We've got Oregon. We've got then Florida, Auburn, Texas, and then A&M. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 total 2-loss teams. Now, we haven't looked at Miami yet. I don't know if we'd put them even close to up here, but Hawaii win.
Oh, that schedule
Win
was
against
so
San
awful.
Diego State. Yeah, if they beat Florida, there's consideration, but the losses to FSU and Virginia are a little rough.
Yeah, I don't think Miami should be really close to the top
Yeah,
12.
no.
Have them
I
at the
agree.
back of that line. No.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Also, like only like no ranked wins unless you consider Hawaii like a fringe top 25.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not loving Texas as much as the rankings, like the coaches poll was. Their best win is Auburn, who seems fraudulent. Oklahoma's falling off. A&M's even worse. So I mean, maybe we don't go SEC Dick Rider right now, because Florida as well. They lost to Tennessee. Their best win is Alabama and Georgia. They lost to Auburn. So I think, honestly, Florida, you gotta rank below Auburn.
Yeah,
Because you have that
Florida you got to rank
head-to-head.
below Auburn. You've also got to rank Florida below Texas.
Or
Got to rank
Auburn below
Auburn below.
Texas. Yeah, so it has to for sure go Texas, Auburn, Florida in the sequence of those three teams.
Question is,
I
where
don't really like Oregon. Their best win is Tennessee, who probably ends up ranked, but BYU, Utah are not fantastic teams.
Yeah,
Like
the Pac-12 really isn't that great of a conference right now.
Pac-12 is going to have to rely on the auto bid.
Hello. Hello. I'm late. How far are we in the rankings?
We are on number 6. So we ranked
Number 6, okay.
Baylor, Michigan, Buffalo, and then
Fair,
now we're in
yeah.
this 2-loss shit show. We decided Georgia Tech at 4, and then number 5 Southern Miss, because they all of a sudden have a ridiculous resume. So now we're just trying to find out where to go. So we not liking the SEC resumes all that much. Iowa State's not a great resume either. Like, best wins are Iowa, BC. In OT, you got Mizzou and Arkansas, sure, but nothing like upper tier. And then you got Oklahoma State, who is their big win is Iowa State just now. So you do have to rank Oklahoma over Iowa State at this point. And then the only other team really to consider here is UNC, who BC, NC State, and then that's it. So I think here I've kind of sold myself into Oklahoma State. They have the best remaining win.
Yeah, 100%. I would agree.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State should be 6.
We can always come back, but let's just get something
I'm
down
gonna
here.
put Oklahoma State 6. Yeah.
Okay, so OK State is done. Okay, so now other 2-loss teams, if you're looking at, like, I think this is probably where we consider an SEC team, maybe Texas, because I think you for sure put Texas over A&M. They face
Yeah, I
next
think
week,
the
so it doesn't matter, but the Auburn win at least.
Oh, they
I
beat
just
San
think
Jose? I'm just kidding. No, I would absolutely put Texas over A&M. I feel like for now, I feel like that's the correct thing to do.
with just how many SEC teams we have right there, just overall, I think Texas needs to be the highest out of the 4 SEC teams that are 9-2 right now.
Yeah, I
think
agree.
now would be a perfect spot to put Texas.
7.
Yeah.
Now, just before we go a bit farther, obviously, I think the G5 rankings at least probably goes Southern Miss, Coastal, and then Fresno. So then we got to kind of decide if Fresno's a player up here. They lost Southern Miss, but they have that Minnesota win. But their only other win is New Mexico, UNLV, and Hawaii. All decent, but they're better than Miami for sure.
The thing that sucks for Fresno State is that with Minnesota losing, it sort of devalues that win. And being in the Mountain West, it's just not. You really need those out of conference wins to like stand out, and they already have the tiebreaker loss to Southern Miss. So as long as Southern Miss keeps it up, they're probably in the third or fourth spot for me.
So does anybody think Coastal is in this range? Not like for 7. I think 7 goes to Texas. I think that's pretty obvious. But in like...
I'd like to consider Coastal around, in the top 10 range for sure.
Probably 10. Okay. Because right now I have Texas at 7. And then we can kind of go any way here. Like I said, you have Coastal. You have UNC. You have Iowa State. You have Oregon, Florida, Auburn. We already decided that Auburn and Florida are going to go in that sequence. I don't know, but okay, so let's decide, where do you put A&M in compared to Auburn and Florida? Because they haven't faced anybody too great since LSU, where they lost. The Baylor loss you can't really fault anybody for.
And I mean, it was a close loss to Baylor too. Like it wasn't a blowout.
That's the one thing that's kind of having me slightly lean towards above Auburn is that close loss to Baylor.
But the problem is, man, there's one quality win on the schedule, or two. It's Oklahoma and TCU. Whereas you look at both these teams, Florida at least has Bama and Georgia. I mean, is Oklahoma, TCU better than Bama, Georgia? I don't know.
I mean, we have to. In my opinion, we'd have to wait till next. We'll get more information next week because LSU could become a quality win if they reach that 6-win mark.
Well, yeah, and then for Auburn, I mean, Arizona, they did beat Florida, right? So that's a decent win for Auburn. I would probably put Auburn above A&M. I'd probably say Auburn's the next SEC team we rank, and then decide between A&M and Florida. But
I'd place it Auburn, Florida, A&M in that order.
Yeah, I'm more just for me, just the way they lose is like the impact and like the thing that's holding it back for me. Because A&M doesn't have that many quality, like they don't have that many quality wins, but like they almost beat Baylor. They were down by like a touchdown. Like that's the only thing that's holding me back.
The eye test for Auburn's terrible because for us the eye test is what you see on stream and game day primarily, and they have 2 bad losses on game day, and that's what the CFP is. It is game day situations. So you're right, it may not be worth ranking Auburn above everybody else, but in terms of resume, what we're doing now, like, do we put UNC up there? But they also don't have any good wins. Like,
I mentioned this in the Mountain West Tribune, but I feel like UNC really doesn't pass the eye test too. I feel like we know who they are and we know like what we expect from them. Like we can, like, if you guys like really want UNC in like a certain spot, like I won't argue against it. It's just that especially for the eye test, I will say I'm the first to admit I was wrong about UNC.
So yeah, I mean for me at this spot, I'm between Auburn, Iowa State, and Coastal for myself on who's the best remaining.
I would probably go Iowa State. Me personally.
Can I see Coastal's resume again?
Yeah. Because at this point, like the best win on the block is Auburn over Florida, but Iowa State and Coastal both have the quantity of quality wins too.
Yeah.
Iowa State, Nebraska, Utah, and then UCF. UAB.
It sucks because that Nebraska win went from one of the greatest wins of all time to it's like, oh, it's all right. Like,
Well,
but like the context
yeah.
of it, like Coastal can pass the test, but for me, I always like was I turned into a Coastal doubter only because AJ Samuel really made that like a two-dimensional team and like made that team run. So that's really why I'm like, I don't know if Coastal can pass that test anymore because I don't know how much Grant Davis can do by
But I
I
himself.
feel
mean,
like
we just saw them on game day though, and they played better than Auburn by a lot.
I couldn't see the game day, so
Oh,
that's just
well,
me.
I mean, it was
I
27
I know
to
it's
also
crazy.
6.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's fair.
I also feel like the Nebraska win has gotten better in recent weeks.
Yes, in
I mean, for
recent
a while
weeks,
there
yeah.
it was awful,
Oh
Yeah.
and
yeah,
I
no,
feel like
it was like 2-3 at one point. I'm like, what the hell? Like,
The Ohio
Uh,
State win and the Utah win diminishing is definitely a bummer for Coastal.
okay, so where do we go? Do we go Auburn? Do we go Iowa State? Coastal? Anyone have a big brain play here?
no, not really.
Well, just gonna go
I
with
kind of,
Iowa State.
yeah.
I'm gonna go with Iowa State.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's just 2 straight losses, but recency bias is that, when you consider everything, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, possibly 5, 6 quality wins before the 2 losses back to back. Obviously, recently recency bias could affected it a little bit, but I'm still a Iowa State believer.
okay, so then I think you go the best remaining win, which would be Auburn, and then probably Coastal. You give the benefit of the doubt to the SEC team over the Sun Belt team. I think is
Yeah,
fair.
I'll give it that.
And then if we don't like it, we can come back. But let's get some teams on the paper here. Okay, so now we have a top 10 solidified as of right now. We have Baylor, Michigan, Buffalo, Georgia Tech, Southern Miss, Oklahoma State, Texas, Iowa State, Auburn, and then Coastal Carolina. So 2 lost teams left is you're looking at UNC, you're looking at Oregon, you're looking at Florida, and you're looking at A&M. So I think this is where you probably put the benefit of the doubt, and you probably put UNC, unless you think the wins of, I think it just depends which pair of wins you like better. So for UNC, their big 2 wins is Boston College and NC State. One on the road, one not. And then for A&M, their big wins are TCU at home and a home win versus Oklahoma. And then for Florida, it is at Bama versus Georgia.
Yeah, I would probably give it to Florida here. Me being a homer, I want to say Boston College is the best team in the nation, but in all seriousness, I feel like Florida just has the better wins.
That 8-3 Bama is looking very good, so I'm gonna have to give it to Florida.
Yeah, it's really hard to it's looking off the pairs of wins. There's really not much that can separate those 3 teams except for that Bama win. I think 8-3 Bama win is what gives Florida just the slightest edge over. I think probably UNC.
Now
Man, it's
before
really
we
difficult.
now before we put it down, technically Oregon does have some more quantity. They have Wyoming, which at Tennessee is probably their big win. BYU I would consider a good win, and then their only other one is Utah in overtime, and Cal. So, do you think Oregon goes above anybody there, or do you think that they would be after these 3? I think Florida is probably 11. I think then
Yeah.
I'd be fine going whichever way you want to go with A&M, UNC, and then Oregon.
I would probably go UNC. I think that's the perfect thing. I think it's UNC, A&M, and Oregon in that order.
Hear me out. Fresno State above Oregon.
Why
As
do you hate Oregon?
No. That is.
Okay,
they
well,
lost to UNLV. Come on.
Exactly.
You know,
Wait. I'm
yeah,
getting there. Mutual opponent. Fresno State killed UNLV compared to
You guys have a
Oregon.
good point. That's actually a really good point.
that's actually a very valid
And
point.
we ranked
Mm.
Southern Miss the top 5 team, and the only blemish on Fresno's schedule is a top 5 team beating them in overtime week 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the quality win against Oregon's
Yeah.
technically better than Tennessee. Okay, let's finish these other ones first before we make some more crazy moves.
He does not want Charlie Brown to succeed.
I love Chadley Brown. So, okay, I'm just going to pencil in UNC, then A&M.
I've turned into a Charlie Brown fan. So
Okay.
Well,
This is gonna be
the train might.
This is gonna be rough.
over.
This is gonna be a rough ranking. Okay, so let me just go back through and cross out everybody who we've ranked now.
Can we
I
not
do agree with
do
Jackie
another
though.
Jordan Travis situation, please? Like, I get it. Charlie Brown is great, but
We don't know if he's injured. I haven't looked. Who knows? He might
Yeah,
have
no,
just been down for the game.
I was gonna say that's the same thing. Like it happened to UNLV in an earlier game where like sometimes like he's out for the game, but it's just a stinger and he's back the next game. So like if next week I fully agree if like the quarterback's out, then we can just like re-rank it. But I think
Okay.
like for now, looking at what Chadley, I mean Fresno State has a really good resume. It sucks that the only loss was now the tiebreaker for the G5. So unless Southern Miss crumbles, I feel like Fresno State should at least get some flowers.
All right.
Cryo.
Well, let's
Before you
look
were
at-
on, I said I wasn't going to let Fresno get Jordan Travis. So even if he's injured, I still think we need to judge based on the quality.
Well,
of the
okay. So Hawaii 8-3. That's I would consider that close to BYU at this point. UNLV, like you said, is a direct comparison. New Mexico is probably considered like a Cal, maybe worse. And then Minnesota's
they
the big
haven't had a
win
2-score game
and the OT
since
loss.
week 2.
Yeah, you can consider. I know you're high on the Bulldogs here, but 1 point loss to
Yeah,
UNLV
yeah.
week 3. Overtime win on the road, Utah. Utah's a tough place to play. You got the BYU win, you got the Wyoming win, which is comparable to that New Mexico win. Cal, like they just have a more quality schedule. Yes, they did lose to Stanford. They do have the one additional loss, and I do think that UNLV loss is bad. It's just like, for instance, it's this argument's not going to matter at all. But if Tennessee wins the SEC, then Oregon has a win over the SEC champion, right? So that would probably jump them back. But I think Oregon obviously is in a much better spot to make the playoff than Fresno State. But I'm fine putting Fresno above.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna learn a lot more next week. I won't be able to make that meeting. I won't be able to make the CCG one, but like I feel like we're gonna learn more, especially if like Charlie Brown's hurt, or like you said, like if Tennessee makes the championship.
Yeah, I mean these are the most important rankings because it sets up where the paths lie. But in this specific situation, between these two, it has no implications on the playoffs. So I don't care what the ranking is. I think it's very close, and I think comparing UNLV losses is perfectly fine. So, all right. So
UNLV mentioned.
So we're now at 16. Okay, and teams I've written down that are remaining. I have Pittsburgh, East Carolina, Cincinnati, Nebraska, Maryland, Minnesota, Iowa, Miami, Ohio, USC, Tennessee, and Oklahoma, and Arkansas State. Some of those teams are going to get left out here. But where do we go? Because now this is kind of where you have a big fall off. Because we had number 15 and Oregon, who seems to be quite a big contender. And it's just kind of fallen off a cliff here in terms of quality. Now, we still have Miami, who is a 2 loss. They can definitely make their own case if they beat Florida this week. They have a win over Hawaii and SDSU, both on the road. Those are their only quality wins here. So I don't know if you rank them 16. I think you rank them still, but I don't know if they're high
They're not
I
quality.
would.
pristine. That's for sure.
We go
Mm,
back to Maryland here. Their loss. Okay, so you have to put Minnesota above Maryland because Minnesota beat them.
yeah.
You got Ohio State. They
Yes.
lost to Penn State. Okay, so there's a head-to-head that we know for sure. And then for Iowa, I don't think you rank them this high. They were lower than this and they lost. But
In the
Minnesota,
20.
they
Jesus.
have that loss to Fresno State. They did beat the Terps. They lost to Michigan and they lost to Iowa. That one's tough. I don't know if you can rank them here.
The Iowa Hawks.
The Hawktuas. Um, how does Pittsburgh look? Are they like a shocking team? Buffalo was a close loss. Lost to BC. That one's stinky. NC State's a win. Clemson's a loss. And then they beat Penn State. So there's 2 wins. That's not great. Do you go immediately back to the G5? Because, like, for instance, Cincinnati, we don't give them a ton of credit, but they have a win over Boston College, win over Army, win over TCU. That's technically 2 quality wins. App State as well. And then they're also, though, you got to keep in mind, they're hanging 70 on multiple teams here. So 4 quality wins, then you're hanging 70 on 2 different teams. I know this is a terrible conference, but
Yeah, the fall off of the AAC needs to be studied.
I mean, you
Holy
could
hell, it really
consider Nebraska. I mean, Tennessee is a win. They lost. I mean, UNLV overtime. That's gross. But then look at this: Missouri, Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Like they have the best remaining wins for sure.
You cannot deny a resume like that.
But I don't think you rank them quite. Like I think, and I think it's also probably time. Let's look at Ohio. This is a terrible resume. Best win is Central Michigan and Akron.
I feel like if we go back to Cincinnati, I just agree in the sense of like I'm fine with ranking them here purely off the fact of like yeah, it's not the greatest schedule, but like they're hanging 70 on people. Like this is clearly now the eye test proves otherwise because we've seen like this core on a game day setting. Not this year, but like in previous years, and we've seen how like Keely Rix was like shitting his pants. So
yeah, and USC does have some good wins, but that loss to UCLA hurts. I think you rank them in the back half of the top 25, and then Tennessee is a team I have here. They have win over Cal, the win over Florida is pretty big. The win over Auburn's also really good. So them and Nebraska are kind of in the same boat because I also got Alabama here. The problem is the losses. I mean, Tennessee has a ton. So I think you rank Tennessee and Nebraska together. I just don't know where that goes. Does it go 16, 17? I don't think so. I think it's probably closer to a 19, 20. I think we're done with the Sun Belt. Yeah, okay, so my vote would probably go Cincinnati here. I think they're the best resume left. And then you probably then go like a Miami or like a Minnesota or a Maryland or somebody. And then you go the Tennessee-Nebraska angle. Let's also take a look at Bama just to check.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Cincinnati and then Minnesota, I think. Don't know where to put Miami.
Oregon State, they lost these games. Yeah, they only have 2 quality wins on the year, and they're 6-win teams. Yeah, so they're rightfully not up to par. I think we can all agree Cincinnati here at 16 is fine. Okay, so
like, I was just gonna say like maybe Cincy, Minnesota, Tennessee, maybe that order.
Yeah,
Because I mean the quality. I mean, you still have really good wins against like Auburn. It is like the biggest one for me.
Yeah, like Nebraska and Tennessee, they have the best wins, but they have the dumbest losses. Like we gotta punish them a little bit. You know what I mean? Like Minnesota, like where are their wins? Ball State, Maryland's the best one, and then Ohio State, they lost to Michigan, lost to Fresno. lost to Iowa, and then like, okay, let's look at Iowa as well, because remember, they have this division locked up. They lost to NC State. That one's rough. Lost to Iowa State in OT. We saw that game. Lost to Ohio State. Wasn't particularly close, and then they lost to Nebraska. Yeah, okay. I think Minnesota's fine here. I would like to probably rank Minnesota and probably Miami right now.
Yeah, I think Miami ahead of Maryland is fine.
Because I know the schedule is not good, and I know the losses. But Miami is also just... The losses are bad.
Yeah.
And
the wins. I will say the wins for Miami are not particularly impressive either.
Well, Miami has some shit wins. Like, I don't want to have to put Nebraska and Tennessee at fucking 18, but I think you, like, everybody else.
I mean, what's USC's schedule again? If you could.
Yeah, USC, we're looking at Clemson on the road. Lost to Cal, lost to LSU. LSU was a good team at one point, but on the road at Arizona, on the road at Stanford, versus Utah, so that's 4 pretty good wins.
If only they didn't lose to UCLA.
And then
if they didn't lose to
UCLA. But that's only one bad loss to UCLA. The other 2 losses are meh. Like, I think USC and Miami are probably comparable resumes.
The problem, I think, with USC, what I like is that it has the possibility of becoming a quality loss if LSU wins. That's a good possibility, but you know.
Maryland, you have to put them under Minnesota, but do you put them over all these other teams? They lost to Michigan, lost to Minnesota, both close games. They've had some injuries, and then lost to Penn State. But that's a better loss than like. But where are the wins? Louisiana. And
that's it.
Ohio State. Louisiana, Ohio State. I don't like that either.
I mean, I'm not against just ranking Maryland here.
Well, we have to put Minnesota above them.
Well, yeah, Minnesota then Maryland. I feel like I'm fine with ranking them back to back.
I think Minnesota's probably the team to rank here for sure.
Of the pizza too, but I feel like back to back isn't like the worst thing to do as well.
Yeah, back to back isn't the worst thing. It was really just between I wanted Minnesota here, and then it was really just down to, okay, is it Maryland or is it Miami here? And I'm absolutely down to have Maryland here.
Maryland, all right. Well, Maryland, and then that at least punishes Tennessee and Nebraska. Now, who do you rank better? Do you go Nebraska or do you go Tennessee?
I know the losses are baffling, but I would probably go Tennessee here. Just because of that win over Auburn.
Oh, well, wait. They fucking played. We got to go Nebraska. Head to
head.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
I forgot they played.
Nebraska. Okay. I also forgot they played. That makes it extremely easy.
That's how tedious this season was for Zach.
Both teams can make their CCGs and make the playoffs still. Weirdly enough, Tennessee has a much better chance of it, but Nebraska is still head-to-head. You got to consider it. Okay, that one was easy. Okay,
that's the thing. They wouldn't be up here this high if they didn't have a chance of winning conference championship game.
Okay, so we're at 20. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spots left. Teams we're looking at: Pittsburgh, East Carolina, Iowa, Miami, Ohio, USC, and Oklahoma and Arkansas State. You have 8 teams I just ranked. We can only rank 5. For me, teams I think have to be ranked for sure. Iowa, because they've already won their division, and they are in place for a playoff bid. And I think that they have wins that show that they can compete. I think Miami deserves it at 9-2. I think Ohio deserves it at 10-1, and I think USC because they've already clinched a spot in there.
What's Ohio's schedule again?
It's very bad. Best wins are Akron
Oh,
and
dear
Central
Lord.
Michigan, and when you look at what you grade top level G5 teams on, when you consider their Power 5 wins, it's Ole Miss and Duke, who 3 combined wins. So I think they deserve a ranking, a shout out for 10-1, but it's kind of like last year with UNLV and Tulane after they lost. It's like, congratulations, but no. you know?
Don't. I already gave him PTSD, bro.
Yeah.
So
That was horrific.
I was so I was 5 losses now,
I was
right?
4 losses.
4 losses.
Iowa,
Okay.
and this is one of those where we're considering division championship because they do have. It's an overtime loss. They competed, sure, whatever, but they have the win over Minnesota is what we're banking on, as well as hanging 56 on Wisconsin. They were in a very competitive game with Nebraska. If you take turnovers out, they win that game 10-6. They threw 2 pick sixes. So I think Iowa is still rankable, and I think when we're considering the CFP and division winners at this point, they deserve a ranking. If they lose next week
I
to Maryland,
absolutely
I'd kick
think
them out. But
Yeah,
I absolutely think Iowa should be ranked because of their division win.
I would.
I'm just thinking.
yeah, I don't think they should be
I'm
up
just
here
thinking.
though.
I'm just thinking whether or not to put them. Yeah, I think USC could be ahead of them. I think Miami could be ahead of them.
Yeah, that's the thing is like I think probably USC is the ranking to go with here because they
Yeah.
have the
Yeah.
quantity and the road wins, but they do have at this point there's no perfect resumes. They're all terrible.
Yeah, and there's not really a lot of good resumes anymore, and it's kind of just who has the
Teams that
quantity, who has
Deserve it, yeah.
This
slight
is
amounts of
way more of
quality.
a shit show from last year. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough season. So, okay, I'm just penciling in USC and then Miami. I'm just going to give USC the benefit of the doubt. They're in a conference. They can make the playoff. They've won their division. Miami's an independent, 9-2. They have worse losses.
Look at Cam go 6-5. Look at him go.
So now we're left with Ohio. We're left with Pitt, East Carolina, Iowa, I think, and then Oklahoma and Arkansas State. So I think here, this is where you go. Iowa, then probably, or we can give Ohio the benefit of the doubt here, put them 23 and Iowa 24. I think that's fine.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I would argue it reverse, me personally, just because like you said earlier, like Iowa has their division locked up. So like
Yeah, that's true.
I feel like that should be
Ohio
rewarded in
does
that sense.
too, but yeah.
But it's a G5, so
It's a G5, and they're pretty low off in the G5 standings. Like if we're looking at it from how we're looking at now, Ohio's probably number 5 in the G5.
Well, if we're looking at it, I mean, in terms of the G5, it's basically like if there's no losing in the last week from the Sun Belt, like Fresno State could maybe find their way into an at-large bid, maybe, but Cincinnati's done and Ohio's done in the G5 race. But they could still make Citrus Bowl. They could still do something, get a high-tier bowl game, right? So they still deserve a rank. So now 25, this is where it comes down to Arkansas State, Oklahoma, East Carolina, and Pittsburgh is the only teams left I have written down. I personally do not like anything Oklahoma's doing.
we know you don't like anything, but
I think this is where you go either. I think you go either Pittsburgh or East Carolina. East Carolina did beat UNC. Pittsburgh has not done anything, but once again, this is kind of a moot point. This is just like who do you want to give the win to, because East Carolina has lost a couple now. Like they're going win-loss. They've lost to all. I mean, okay, so they lost to, if we're going by our rankings, number 2, number 3, and number 4 are their losses. So they did beat Georgia, or they lost to Georgia too.
Yeah, I'd give ECU 25 just because of the quality of the losses.
And then Pittsburgh, they have one more win, but Buffalo's
Yeah,
comparable.
like we could very easily be talking about ECU up and around and near the top 12 without the Buffalo loss.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's just and again, the Buffalo loss was by 1 point.
I
And
mean, East Carolina is a playoff team caliber. They're one of the best
they're
teams in the
just
country.
they're just
It's just
in they're just in a bad they're just in a
they have,
stacked
yeah, they
conference.
had an insane schedule. They lost 3 out of their 4 biggest games: Michigan, Buffalo, Georgia Tech. So they're still rankable. That's why we'll give them 25, but they're not a threat for the playoffs. So, all right, so we got our top 25 here. This only took an hour. That's great for the first rankings. Normally they take an hour 30. So, before we go out of here, I'm going to go through the top 25. If you want to go back to an area and look at it, we can. Remember, this is week 13. We want to get these as good as possible because this is laying the foundation for what we do the rest of the season. So, number 1, we have Baylor, Michigan, then Buffalo, Georgia Tech, and Southern Miss. That's your top 5. 6 through 10 is Oklahoma State, Texas, Iowa State, and Auburn, and Coastal Carolina. Then at 11 you got Florida, 12 North Carolina, 13 Texas A&M, 14 Fresno State, 15 is Oregon, 16 is Cincinnati, 17 Minnesota, 18 is Maryland, 19 is Nebraska, 20 is Tennessee, 21 is USC, 22 is Miami, 23 is Iowa, 24 is Ohio, and 25 is ECU. Anybody have anything they want to go back on?
Not really.
No,
I mean, if the only thing I would probably swap, like, you really care about like Iowa locking up their division? If so, I would probably put them over Miami, but that's like a very minute detail.
I think maybe next week, but I also think that they lost to Nebraska this week. They have a chance to beat Maryland next week. If they do beat Maryland, it'd be very nice. But yeah, so I think that is good to wrap up. I see Flame just joined. So, Flame, I'm going to run through the top 25 for you. Just let me know if you have a question or you want to look at something. We've got
All right.
we got Baylor at 1. You can't dispute that. We got Michigan at 2, Buffalo at 3, Georgia Tech at 4, Southern Miss is at 5, Oklahoma State is at
That's
6.
odd, but okay.
I'll show you the resume. It makes sense. 7 is Texas,
Uh,
8 is Iowa State, 9 is Auburn, 10 is Coastal, 11 is Florida, 12 is North Carolina, 13 is A&M, 14 is Fresno State, 15 is Oregon, 16 Cincy, 17 Minnesota, 18 Maryland, 19 is Nebraska, 20 is Tennessee, 21 USC, 22 Miami, 23 Iowa, 24 Ohio, and 25 East Carolina. So,
I'm gonna need to see Southern Miss's resume.
yeah,
Because them at
so
5.
I was a little skeptical too. Now, here's why we decided on it. One, first look at the resume. Win over Fresno, win over Texas on the
Okay.
road, win over UAB's technically quality. Their only loss is an OT to LA Tech. You've gotten then a win over Coastal, Troy, and Arkansas State. So that is quote-unquote 6 quality wins. 3 of them are ranked: Coastal, Texas, and Fresno State. So after looking at it, we were like, okay, the resumes are comparable between Texas and Southern Miss, so you kind of have to consider that
Southern Miss,
head-to-head.
Yeah.
And
All right then.
and also, we're looking at all these 2-loss resumes. They're all pretty bad. Nobody has upper-tier wins. Texas' best win is Auburn. Iowa State doesn't have a great win. Auburn's best win's Florida. Coastal Carolina's, so that's why we decided
I've
to
popped
give
in
Southern
and
Miss a
out,
shout.
so yeah, I've popped in and out, so yeah, I've seen some of these resumes. So
All right.
overall, no real problems.
It's
So
never going to be a good set of rankings, but I think this is a good base, and then we can build off it. So that's going to end the meeting. Thank you guys for sticking around for an hour of your time. I'm going to get the rankings in the game. I'm going to post them, and then I'll do I'm gonna take a break to eat dinner, and then I'll do recruiting and all my normal stuff. While you're waiting for rankings, please don't leak them to general chat, and then also when people, if there's a big hoopla about a ranking or something, point them to the VOD that's going to be posted later tonight. You can give your reasoning if you want, but then they're just going to yell at you. So we always just kind of point them to the VOD if they have an issue with the rankings.
Can I just say womp womp?
If you want, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
That would be funny. I think